I was momentarily taken aback when I received Mrs. Wise's call. She said, "Zelda, Rick's back. Do you have time to come home for dinner?" Rick Ford had been abroad for 2 years, and I hadn't seen him in just as long. To be honest, I really disliked Rick. The 2 years without him in my sight had been incredibly pleasant. I recalled how 2 years ago, everyone thought I was so nice to Rick because I fancied him. In reality, it was only because his surname was Ford, only because he was the sole son of Mr. and Mrs. Ford. I had been adopted into their family when I was 14. Every day, I carefully tended to him despite his cold and sour face, occasionally enduring his sarcastic remarks. There was even a time when he carelessly pushed me down the stairs, resulting in a fractured rib that left me bedridden for a month. But I could accept all of this because I was adopted. Back then, I went out of my way to be kind to him, simply to secure a better place in an unfamiliar environment. It was merely a matter of reading the situation. What did his return have to do with me? Still, I smiled and said to Mrs. Wise, "You and Rick should have a good catch-up, Mrs. Wise. I've got a pile of work at the Research Institute. I'll come see you another day." Mrs. Wise replied, "Zelda, Rick really wants to see you too. He specifically asked why you weren't at home." I was surprised by Mrs. Wise's thoughts. How could he possibly want to see me? I still politely declined. That evening, my junior from university asked me out for dinner, and I happily agreed. He was 2 years my junior, not only handsome but also witty and humorous. He was full of energy, and being around him always made me feel lively too. As I rubbed my cheeks and walked out of the restaurant, I suddenly caught sight of Rick. There was a woman standing beside him, someone I knew and disliked. He seemed to have spotted me too, his gaze turning in my direction. Instinctively, I quickly grabbed my junior's arm and turned to leave. The younger student didn't notice my unease. Under his witty charm, I gradually forgot the creepy feeling I had just experienced. "Miss," his voice was clear and full of laughter, "what if people think I'm a toy boy being kept by a sugar mummy when I get out of your car? Don't be silly. If I were driving a Maserati or something like that, then you might have cause for concern. My car was quite ordinary, bought for less than £10,000. Rick Ford would consider such a car rubbish." The younger student waved goodbye with a smile, and I started the engine to head back to my flat. After parking and closing the car door, I turned to leave when a man suddenly appeared in front of me, scaring me half to death. I held back the urge to scream and stepped back several paces. When I looked closely, I realized it was Rick Ford. Although we hadn't seen each other for over 2 years, his face wasn't unfamiliar at all. He was as handsome as ever, unchanged. I steadied myself and gave Rick a polite smile. "Rick, what are you doing here so late at night?" He didn't answer my question. After silently looking at me for a moment, he spoke with an accusatory tone. "Dinner and shopping with a younger man, is this the pile of work you said you had today?" I frowned, deeply annoyed by his tone, but I still managed to keep smiling patiently. "What do you mean by that? Rita said you wanted to see me, surely that can't be true." Seeing my smiling face, Rick's tone softened considerably. He sighed gently in front of me, then asked quietly, "Why haven't you contacted me these past 2 years?" He continued, "Didn't you see the letter I left for you before I went abroad?" I still looked puzzled. "Letter? What letter? Why would you leave me a letter?" Seeing my confused expression, he seemed to have a sudden realization. "I see." I heard him say softly, "I'm very sorry. I said many things in the past that hurt you. I can't change the past, but I'll do my best to make it up to you in the future." It took me a good 10 seconds to realize that this young master was actually apologizing to me. For the first time in over a decade, I heard him apologize. He then said, "Zelda, I hope you can come home." Looking at the sincere face before me, I found it a bit strange. I still couldn't understand why he was here in my flat's car park now, or why he was looking at me with such a complex expression. I smiled and said, "How can you say that? I've never blamed you for anything." His brows furrowed. "No, you are still blaming me." I was speechless. Although I disliked him, I had never truly blamed him. The Ford family had been so good to me that I could tolerate Rick's presence, despite his unkindness towards me. I simply wished to avoid direct interactions with him in the future. But how could I say such things outright? I looked at him with a smile and said, "What do you want me to say, Rick?" "I'll never blame you." I saw his eyes noticeably brighten. Before I could react, he stepped forward and embraced me. He seemed delighted, whispering softly in my ear with an almost tender tone, "Thank you, Zelda." What was he doing? Had I forgotten some past relationship between us? Just as I was about to struggle out of his embrace, he casually released me. His eyes crinkled into crescents as he smiled at me, as if I were his sweetheart. I sat across from him, listening to him prattle on about trivial matters from the past 2 years, then asking about my experiences. My gaze rested on him, but my mind had wandered far away. The clock chimed, marking 11 o'clock at night. I snapped back to reality. It had only been 2 years since we last met. How had he become so talkative? I seized an opportunity to interrupt him. "It's getting late. Let's catch up another time, shall we?" Worried that my tone might sound too dismissive, especially given this young master's temperament. I added politely, "Are you heading home, or shall I prepare the guest room for you?" I stood up, intending to see him out. He paused for a moment, then said awkwardly, "Tomorrow, perhaps." I came in a hurry today and didn't bring any luggage. While I was still bewildered, he had already risen nonchalantly, his tall figure casting a long shadow across the living room floor. He took out his phone and added me on WhatsApp, then made me take out my phone and accept his request. He also had me save his number in my contacts, with Rick as the name. He asked, "What's the passcode for this little flat of yours?" Suppressing my confusion, I told him, "The passcode to my flat is known only to me. If you knew it and anything went missing, it would be your fault." He chuckled, seeming quite amused. "I'll be moving in while you're at work, so you won't be able to let me in anyway." I was gradually shocked by his words. "What did you say? Moving in? What do you mean, moving in?" He crossed his arms and leaned down to look at me closely. "Zelda, are you so happy you've gone daft?" I said, "I'm moving in to live with you." He patted my cheek, grinning mischievously. "Prepare the bedroom nicely for me, I'll be here tomorrow. Remember to send me the passcode." I froze, and by the time I came to my senses, the door had already slammed shut. It was too late to call Rita and ask if Rick had suffered some kind of shock. I suppressed my confusion, planning to deal with this situation tomorrow. That night, I didn't sleep well, drifting in and out of a dream I hadn't had in a long time. In the dream, I was 14, lazily doing my homework by a sun-facing window. Mom returned from shopping, her face showing a panic I had never seen before. She hid me behind a secret panel in the bookcase, instructing me not to come out no matter what happened. Then, from that dark, cramped space, I heard the muffled sound of gunshots. I covered my mouth, trembling with fear. When I emerged from the hiding place, amidst the chaos, I saw my mother's bloodied body. I spent a long time at the police station before Rita brought me to the Ford family. In front of the Fords, she said to me, "Zelda, from now on, you're my own daughter." Rick's face appeared, looking down at me with disdain in his eyes. I heard him say to Rita, "Are you so desperate for a daughter that you take in any dirty, ugly child?" He pushed me down the stairs. The glass of juice in my hand shattered on the floor, while Nina stood beside him, covering her mouth and laughing at me curled up on the ground. If only there was a way to never have to face Rick again. I calculated the time, hurriedly finished my morning routine, and drove to the Ford residence. I tactfully explained Rick's bizarre behavior from last night to Rita. "Rita, I'm a young woman. What if I have a boyfriend someday? What would people think if they heard I was living with another man? Please, you must stop Rick." Rita seemed surprised after hearing my account. I imagined she was also shocked by Rick's confusing behavior. But in the end, Rita agreed, "Zelda, don't worry. As long as you're uncomfortable with it, I won't let him bother you." I breathed a sigh of relief, then heard Rita ask, "But Zelda, tell me honestly, people used to say you fancied Rick. Was that true?" I replied seriously, "Rita, of course not. Although I call you Rita, all these years I've always thought of you as my mother." Rick and I are both your children, how could I have that kind of feelings for him? Rita sighed, Zelda, if you don't like him, it's his loss. No matter what happens between you and Rick in the future, you'll always be my good child. I'll always be your strongest supporter, remember that, alright? I couldn't help but hug Rita, smiling and playfully saying, I'll remember. Rita is the best to me. With the major concern resolved, I returned to the research institute with peace of mind. At noon, Garrett Longbottom sent me a message, Senior, my competition prize money has arrived. Can I treat you to a meal if you're free? I couldn't help but smile as I replied, Sure, Junior. You've accomplished great things so quietly. Of course, just look at whose junior I am. My smile widened, see you at the usual place. During our meal, my junior looked at me for a moment and said, Next month is the graduation ceremony. Everyone in my dorm is getting flowers except me. Senior, you're my only senior. Would you mind bringing me some? I laughed at his request, I didn't realize you cared so much about appearances. No problem, I'll bring you flowers even if I have to take time off. Do you want your big sister to dress up for the occasion? Before Garrett could respond, my phone rang abruptly. The screen displayed 2 words, Rick. My smile vanished instantly. I had set it to do not disturb and placed the phone face down on the table. Garrett looked curious, Senior? Who's that? I frowned slightly, it's someone quite annoying. I can't cut contact completely due to family connections. Garrett seemed confused, then why does he have such an intimate nickname in your contacts? I was taken aback. My junior had a point, the nickname was inappropriate. I immediately changed the name to Rick Ford. Garrett looked thoughtfully at my phone screen and said, You didn't set that nickname yourself, did you? I nodded, he took my phone and entered it himself. Garrett said seriously, Senior, this person clearly has ulterior motives towards you. I paused for a moment. Rick's behavior last night did seem rather inappropriate. Seeing my frown, Garrett offered advice, Senior, you need a man by your side right now. That should make him more cautious about approaching you. I considered it for a moment and found it quite logical, you're right. I'll ask one of my single colleagues for help when I get back. Garrett looked at me somewhat dejectedly, why look for a colleague? Senior, am I so insignificant to you? Won't you consider the person right in front of you? My eyes lit up, but then I thought of something inside, but you haven't even graduated yet. You're not worldly enough. You wouldn't be intimidating in front of him. You're not suitable, I'm afraid. Suddenly, Garrett sat up straight, his face expressionless as he looked at me coldly, Zelda White, take back what you just said, or I have 100 ways to make you regret it. I was startled by his unfamiliar demeanor. He dropped the act that had seemed so foreign to me and smiled with satisfaction. How was that, Senior? Intimidating enough? If not, I can add more to my performance when we get back. I found myself asking involuntarily, what else would you add? He played coy, you'll have to choose me if you want to see what I can do. I seriously considered the feasibility of this and realized his approach was indeed flawless. So I nodded, all right, you were really impressive just now. Garrett, you're brilliant. You've solved a huge problem for me. On your graduation day, I'll definitely send you the biggest and best bouquet to steal the show. Garrett chuckled softly, sounds good. I expect you to dress up for the occasion too, Miss Lynn. No problem. As we parted, Garrett asked, Miss Lynn, what's my name saved as in your phone? Garrett Longbottom, Jr. That's too formal, Garrett said, slightly dissatisfied. Change it. He quickly added, I think if that Rick Ford ever sees that you've saved my name in a very intimate way, it would be quite a blow to him too. I thought this made sense and asked for Garrett's opinion, so what should I save you as? He stroked his chin thoughtfully for a moment, then raised an eyebrow at me with a flash of inspiration. How about Sweet Garrett, and make sure to star it so it's at the top of your contacts. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. That evening when I got home, I had barely closed the door and hadn't even had a chance to change my shoes when there was a knock. I peeked through the peephole and saw it was Rick Ford. I opened the door, and Rick's gaze fell on my face. Why didn't you answer your phone? I couldn't even be bothered to fake a smile, and replied dismissively, "Sorry, I didn't see it." He took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Sweetheart, why don't you want to live with me?" I asked back in surprise. "Why would I want to? Since I saw you yesterday, I've been wondering why your attitude towards me has changed so much after 2 years." Rick's expression was complex. "I thought when you said you'd never blame me, you meant it." I nodded. "Indeed, I did mean it. But what does that have to do with you wanting to move in here?" He looked somewhat dejected. "Sweetheart, I just want to make it up to you in every way I can." "Make it up to me? Moving in here is your way of making it up to me? Are you sure you're not trying to scare me to death?" He frowned, compromising reluctantly. "If you don't want me to, I respect that." "I won't move in," I said firmly. "Of course I don't want you to." Rick's brow furrowed deeply. "Sweetheart, I genuinely want to make amends." I laughed bitterly. "How many times do I have to tell you? I've never blamed you. We'll have our separate lives from now on. I hope we have as little contact as possible. Do you understand what I'm saying?" "Impossible." He actually got angry, his voice already irritated. "You say I've changed a lot in these 2 years, but what about you? Not only have you moved out, but what's with your attitude towards me? You used to be so kind and attentive to me, you saved my life, and now you're telling me you want us to have separate lives? The past is the past. Now, I don't want to keep seeing you. If you really want to make amends, please try not to bother me, thank you," I said, then slammed the door shut with a bang. It feels so much better to speak my mind now that I've moved out. In the past, I wouldn't have dared to talk to him like this. Thinking back on saving him, it wasn't something I wanted to do. But I was the unfortunate one who happened to be there, and I couldn't just let him die. Nina Veal was Rick's friend and a TikTok influencer with over 2 million followers. 2 years ago, she was kidnapped by one of her obsessed fans. The kidnapper had set up a romantic candlelit flower scene in an abandoned house in the middle of nowhere, intending to burn together with Nina. Rick was brave enough to go rescue her alone. It was late at night when I was returning from visiting my father's grave. I happened to pass by that wasteland and saw the flames from afar. If I hadn't been passing by, driven by curiosity, and driven closer to take a look, Rick might have perished in the fire that day. I recognized Rick's newly bought car parked not far from the house. As I approached, I saw Nina sitting on the ground in front of the abandoned house, crying hysterically, her clothes torn and dirty. When she saw me, it was as if she'd seen a lifeline. She grabbed my clothes, crying and begging me to go in and save Rick, who was trapped inside with the kidnapper. In my ears were her tearful, hiccuping confessions. She said she would never bully me again, that from now on I would be her savior, and she would worship me like an ancestor. I glanced at the raging fire, shook off Nina's hand, and walked towards my car while taking out my phone. I immediately called for emergency services, quickly giving the address to the emergency center over the phone while dousing myself with the bottled water I kept in the car for emergencies. I soaked a cleaning cloth, wrapped it around my head and nose, and turned towards the fire. I quickly found Rick unconscious on the ground. As I dragged him up, I saw him struggle to open his eyes and look at me for a moment before passing out again. I was extremely grateful for my daily fitness routine that had built up my strength, otherwise I definitely wouldn't have been able to carry out his 6 feet 1 inch bulk. Before I passed out, I could still hear Nina's earth-shattering wails. I even had a fleeting urge to laugh at how ugly this person looked, scared out of her wits, the same person who usually bossed me around and saw me as her nemesis. Nina had suffered the least injuries, and she was the first person I saw when I woke up. I didn't want to deal with her at all, but she sat next to me and chuckled to herself. "You really do like Rick." "I knew it, you really are my biggest threat." I glanced at her. She looked dejected, and I thought the smoke might have addled her brain. I couldn't be bothered to respond, but she suddenly reached out and gripped my arm. "Zelda, can you give up on Rick? I'll do anything you want, I really can't live without him." It was rather pathetic, I thought. She had always been hostile towards me because of Rick. Now she was probably afraid that after this incident, Rick might change his attitude towards me and no longer side with her in disliking me. Looking at Nina's humble, pleading expression, a wicked thought suddenly occurred to me. I looked at her seriously and said, "You're right. I can't hide it from you anymore. I like Rick, so I'll do anything for him, even risk my life to save him. Her face turned pale instantly. Holding back my laughter, I continued my heartfelt confession. So what if you've been his childhood friend? You can't always be by his side. Although I met Rick a few years later than you, I've spent much more time with him than you have. It doesn't matter that he doesn't like me now, Rick will eventually be moved by me. I won't marry anyone but him in this life. Nina was shocked by my words, her face drained of all color. Then she walked away, looking lost. I happily went back to sleep. Although I had asked my junior to help me deal with Rick Ford when necessary, I hadn't expected him to act so quickly. The next day after work, he was sitting in a small chair at the bottom of the Research Institute building, his long legs naturally crossed, with several large paper bags beside him. He was wearing black casual clothes, his hair a bit shorter, and the fringe that had slightly covered his eyebrows yesterday was now brushed up, revealing his full forehead. Because the change was so drastic, I didn't realize it was him when I walked by. But he saw me, Senior. I froze, my eyes full of amazement. Garrett Longbottom's lips curled up slightly as he said softly, Senior, so you like this style. I came to my senses, my face feeling a bit hot. I coughed awkwardly. Is this your gear? I was planning to implement a backup plan if you didn't like it. It's very cool, very cool. This is great, I praised repeatedly, appearing calm on the surface, but inwardly screaming, getting a crush on your own junior, how embarrassing, Zelda White. Garrett seemed oblivious, smiling at me, then I'll dress like this from now on. I changed the subject. Why didn't you tell me you were coming? I almost didn't recognize you just now. What if I had missed you? He looked at me deeply for a few seconds before saying, I would recognize you, Senior. No matter how many years pass, whatever clothes you wear, whatever style you change to, I would recognize you. I scolded him, don't flirt with your senior. He wore an innocent smile, though it somehow looked a bit cheeky, I'm telling the truth. Did that flirt with you, Senior? I wanted to disappear on the spot. Seeing my annoyance, he stopped teasing me and handed me the large paper bags, see if you like these. I chose them based on your usual style, I think they'll suit you. I rummaged through them and found they were all women's clothes. I asked, puzzled, what's this for? This is our gear, he pointed at the numbers marked with a marker on the bags, I've numbered them. Tell me in advance which one you want to wear, so I can match you. I suddenly understood, unable to hide my surprise. Couple outfits? Is that really necessary? He smiled, of course it is. I've done some research, that Rick Ford seems quite difficult to deal with. But don't worry, Senior, I'm here for you. I reflexively retorted, who said I was worried about him? He gave me a meaningful look, saying with some resignation, last time, I don't know who it was that grabbed my arm and ran when they saw that Ford guy. Oh my, he had noticed that? But it's not surprising, his observation skills have always been strong, probably because his father is a police officer. When I first heard that his father was a police officer, I was taken aback. Because my father had also been a police officer. And everything I experienced when I was 14 stemmed from this. When I was little, father was always out early and back late, rarely spending time with mom and me. It was already good if he could rest for 2 or 3 days a month. A call for duty could take him away at any time. Mom, when is Dad coming home? Dad came back last night, but you were already asleep, Zelda. He had to leave early for a mission today, so he didn't wake you up. Mom, I want to see Dad. Can I video call him? Dad's working, honey. He can't talk to you right now. After I turned 12, I never saw father again. I always asked Mom when Dad would come home, and every time she would say, soon. Then one day, a news story caused an uproar online. An undercover police officer had been brutally murdered by drug dealers and his body dumped on the motorway. The photos spread across the internet. The face was unrecognizable, a bloody mess. No one ever told me it was my father. But that day, my school happened to have a half day off, and I came home early. When I heard Mom talking to herself in the bedroom, crying her heart out, I understood everything. Garrett waved his hands in front of my eyes, Senior, what are you thinking about? I snapped out of my memories and smiled at my junior. How much did you spend on the gear? I'll reimburse you. He looked at me with a slight frown. No need. My sincerity is priceless. Senior, you'd better save your money for your mortgage. The gloomy emotions in my heart vanished, and I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I glanced at my calendar reminder when I got home and saw that Uncle Theodore's 50th birthday was the day after tomorrow. The birthday fell on a Saturday, so I took the gift I had prepared earlier and arrived at the Ford residence early in the morning. As soon as Rick saw me, he frowned and said, "Didn't you say you didn't want to see me? You knew I was home, yet you still came?" I could only reply, "I'm here for Uncle Theodore's birthday." "It has nothing to do with you." He seemed irritated by my response and said slowly, emphasizing each word, "Sweetie Ford, you're something else." He turned away without looking at me again and quickly walked towards the main hall. Soon, he was surrounded by a crowd of people, the center of attention. Rick was the sole heir to the Ford family, and it was clear that Uncle Theodore intended to use this occasion to introduce Rick to people in their social circle. I suspected he would soon be starting his training at Ford Group. Aunt Rita linked her arm with mine and sat me down beside her. Various ladies of high society came over to greet us from time to time. Shortly after, Zelda arrived, followed by Charles. Seeing that I now had company, Aunt Rita excused herself to attend to other matters. We sat together, dealing with the guests who approached us for a while before Charles suggested that Zelda and I go outside with him. "We've delivered the gifts, that's enough. Today is Uncle Theodore and Rick's day. It's boring for us to just sit here, let's go for a walk," he said. I glanced at Aunt Rita, who was surrounded by people, and thought Charles had a point. So I followed him through the main hall towards the front door. Just as we were about to exit, someone grabbed my wrist. I turned around to see Rick. Rick ignored Zelda and Charles, focusing solely on me. "You're guests, you can leave if you want, but Sweetie can't. She's a host, and hosts don't slack off. Come with me." In front of everyone, I could only whisper, "Charles, Zelda, I'm not going out anymore. Rick, please let go of me." Then I followed Rick to the center of the venue, where I saw Uncle Theodore engrossed in conversation with a middle-aged gentleman. "Miss Ford." A young man suddenly appeared beside me, looking at me somewhat shyly. "Miss Ford. I'm so glad to see you." Miss Ford? Only during Q&A sessions at lectures would anyone call me that. Realizing the situation, I smiled politely at him. "Oh, there's no need for such formality. Please, just call me by my name." The young man smiled bashfully. "You're too modest, Miss Ford. You've always been my idol. I've read all your published papers many times, and I've been following all your competitions and lectures." I took a step closer to him. "Thank you for your support, but please don't call me Miss here." The young man looked at me, his eyes shining with expectation, and stuttered, "Then, can I call you Sweetie?" I'm Owen." Rick had been standing next to me the whole time. Upon hearing this, he put down his glass and looked at Owen with an unfriendly expression. Calling her Sweetie right off the bat? "Isn't that a bit forward, Mr. Warrington?" It turned out that the middle-aged gentleman was Owen's father. Displeased that his son was called forward, he came over to interject. "Young Mr. Ford, why are you being so old-fashioned? This son of mine has no interest in the family business at all. He spends all day buried in academic papers in the lab, constantly talking about Miss Ford this and Miss Ford that at home. Now that he's met the real Miss Ford, he can barely string a sentence together." Owen's father then turned to Uncle Theodore and said, "Mr. Ford, both children love research, they must have a lot in common. I wonder if your niece would consider my boy?" The sudden turn in the conversation caught me off guard. I glanced at Owen, whose face had turned bright red. My heart sank, and I was about to speak when I saw Uncle Theodore smiling, with an inexplicable hint of pride on his face. "Young people, it's normal for them to make friends. I don't like to interfere, Arthur. You shouldn't worry too much either. Let them figure things out themselves. It's too tiring to manage everything." Owen's father immediately understood. "You're right, Mr. Ford. But our Owen's biggest dream is to get into the research institute where your niece works. He hasn't managed to get in yet, but if he does in the future, I hope your niece can look after him." Uncle Theodore agreed with a smile. Of course, of course." I breathed a sigh of relief. Rick let out a cold snort beside me, gulped down a glass of wine, and looked extremely displeased. Uncle Theodore gave Rick a meaningful look but said nothing. Wherever Rick went, he dragged me along, pulling my arm if I didn't move. To avoid people noticing us struggling, I had no choice but to obediently follow behind him. There were so many people wanting to toast with him. Rick, usually such a cold and aloof person, was now accepting drinks from everyone who offered. He was drinking far too quickly, and soon it went to his head. His face gradually turned red, until eventually he looked like a fully cooked, flailing lobster. He started snatching drinks from other people's hands, and even though he was clearly drunk, he refused to leave when we tried to pull him away. The scene became quite chaotic for a while. I immediately signaled to 2 security guards in the corner, who each took one of Rick's arms and dragged him to his bedroom. After apologizing to everyone, I followed them. We finally managed to get him into the room. I turned to leave, but he grabbed my arm. He was mumbling, with a hint of tears in his voice. "Tina, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. You said you'd never blame me. You can't go back on your word." "How could you go back on your word?" "Tina. I'm sorry. I didn't want to talk to a drunk person, so I tried hard to pull my arm away." Suddenly, he wrapped both arms around me and held me tight against his chest. I took a sharp breath and pushed him away forcefully. He lay on the bed with his lobster-red face, looking at me with unfocused eyes. His face was unnaturally red now. I turned and took a few steps towards the door, only to be grabbed by him again. "Don't go," he said. As he spoke, he tackled me onto the carpet, lying on top of me like a dead weight. Just then, Zelda entered the room. Seeing the situation, she was startled and quickly came over to try and pull Rick off. She wasn't strong enough, but then Charles arrived and finally managed to rescue me. For this to happen at such a crucial moment, and involving me, I was sure Mr. and Mrs. Ford had seen it. I felt quite anxious. I walked over to Mrs. Ford, who took my hand with a worried expression. "Tina, are you all right? I can't believe Rick got drunk at an event like this. I'm so disappointed in him." "I'm fine," I smiled, though my heart was racing. I gathered my thoughts and said, "Mrs. Ford, Rick and I may have had some unpleasantness in the past. Since he came back, he's apologized to me many times. I've told him over and over that I don't blame him, but he doesn't believe me. Mrs. Ford, could you please tell him not to dwell on the past anymore? He'll listen to you." Mrs. Ford stroked my head and gently agreed. But the matter didn't end there. That night, Charles, Zelda and I were all asked to stay at the Ford house. Mr. Ford called me to his study. I had a feeling it was related to today's events. His first words were, "Tina, have you and Rick had a falling out?" I was so fed up with Rick, all these troubles were caused by him. I was furious inside, but outwardly I calmly said, "We may have had some minor disagreements in the past. It's my fault for not handling it well and causing such a big mess." Mr. Ford smiled kindly. "Tina, don't take all the responsibility on yourself. You don't need to be so considerate, we're family." I smiled back. "Thank you, Mr. Ford. Look at how considerate you are. Why are you saying thank you? Family doesn't need to say thank you." After chatting for a bit longer, I had a nagging feeling that Mr. Ford hadn't yet come to the real reason for our talk. Just as I was thinking this, Mr. Ford suddenly asked, "Tina, what's the current status of your relationship with Rick?" I was stunned for a moment. What did he mean by that? After I came to live with the Ford family, I signed a total of 3 agreements. One of these agreements had a supplementary clause attached. With my good memory and quick reading speed, I managed to remember its contents during the few seconds I spent on the signature page. When formally adopting a child, if there are no additional constraints, the child has inheritance rights. The agreement stipulating that I voluntarily give up my right to inherit property was completely understandable. I was already grateful to have a place to call home. However, there was another clause concerning the relationship between the adopted child and the biological child. It stated that if I had any improper thoughts towards Rick, the adoption relationship would be terminated on the grounds of unacceptable incestuous feelings. And I would be expelled from the Ford family. So now, were they trying to probe my attitude towards Rick to consider terminating the adoption? I looked at Uncle Theodore seriously and said, Rick and I have never had any ambiguous behavior. I will never like Rick, and he will never like me. Uncle Theodore was shocked by my resolute words. He raised an eyebrow and said, Why are you so agitated? Uncle would be happy if you liked Rick. As for Rick not liking you, maybe that was true before, but now it's obvious he likes you very much. Today he was probably just jealous, wasn't he? My heart felt inexplicably desolate. I reiterated, Uncle, I'm not arguing with you. I'm stating a fact. I really don't like Rick. Besides, Uncle, I already have a boyfriend. I just haven't had the chance to tell you and Aunt Rita yet. Uncle Theodore frowned, seemingly not expecting this situation. He adjusted the glasses on his nose and said, Wait a moment, let me process this. No, you're a steady girl. How could you suddenly have a boyfriend? I really do, I said solemnly. Uncle Theodore seemed a bit distressed. After a moment, he said, Zelda, when you say you haven't had the chance to tell us, does that mean you've only been together for a short time? I was confused. What do you mean by that, Uncle? Although we haven't been together long, we've known each other for a while. Getting together was a very natural progression. Uncle Theodore frowned again. He always did that when faced with thorny issues. Zelda, do you really not like Rick? I felt a bit suffocated. Uncle, I have a boyfriend now. He seemed not to hear me. Rick likes you very much, Zelda. I think you two, having grown up together, are more compatible than anyone else. I hope you two can be together. I quietly looked at Uncle Theodore for a while. His seriousness made me feel absurd. Uncle, are you testing me? I know the contents of that supplementary agreement I signed before. Uncle Theodore is a smart man. From his shocked expression, I could see he understood what I was talking about. He clearly hadn't expected that I could remember the contents of the agreement in just a few seconds. He said somewhat guiltily, Zelda, about this matter, you're a smart girl. My handling of it was actually quite normal. At that time, we didn't know each other well. I'm a businessman, used to looking at things from a business perspective. But after interacting with you for over a decade, you've proven to be truly exceptional. Your Aunt Rita and I have long since genuinely considered you as family. I hope you won't take that agreement to heart. Uncle has absolutely no intention of testing you today. That agreement was destroyed by your aunt long ago. I looked at Uncle Theodore earnestly and said, I've always thought you did the right thing, Uncle. Since you initially didn't want me and Rick to have any entanglements, I hope you can stick to that idea. Perhaps Rick has indeed developed feelings for me now, but I have no romantic feelings for him whatsoever, not in the past, not now, and not in the future. I'll never forget the kindness you've shown in raising me, but Uncle, please respect my love life. I left the study with a heavy heart. Uncle Theodore actually wanted to set me up with Rick. It was utterly absurd. Lost in thought, I was approaching my bedroom when I unexpectedly collided with someone blocking my path. It was Rick. He had been sleeping for a long time, and now it seemed he had finally sobered up. However, his usually clear almond-shaped eyes were still alarmingly bloodshot. I sighed, intending to step around him and continue on my way. As we brushed past each other, he reached out and grabbed my arm. Zelda, his voice was terribly hoarse, is what you told my dad true? I looked at him and nodded, Zelda, I don't believe it. He stared at me, as if trying to discern something from my face. He said, Don't you like me? I stated firmly, No, please don't misunderstand. I've never liked you that way. After a moment, I added, Rick, may I ask what gave you that impression? He forced a stiff smile. Who was it that always insisted on waiting for me after school? Who constantly reminded me to eat breakfast? Who smiled and said good night to me every evening? Who was always the first to rush to my side when I needed someone? Who stayed up all night by my bedside when I was ill? His anger gradually subsided as he continued, choking up. Who risked their life to save me from the fire? Who said they would find a way to make me, Rick Ford, fall in love with you, Zelda White? Who said they wouldn't marry anyone but me? During secondary school, Rick and I were in the same class. Rita would say, Zelda, walk home with Rick. So after school, even if he often lingered outside until late, I would have the driver find him and bring him home. Rita hadn't resigned from her job then and was always very busy. She asked me every day if Rick and I had eaten properly. So I made it my daily mission to ensure Rick ate his meals. Back then, in the evenings at the Ford house, it was just the two of us besides the servants. So even if he ignored me, I would politely wish him good night whenever I saw him before bed. When he got into fights and trouble outside, I would often help clean up the mess. Once he had a high fever late at night and stubbornly refused to see a doctor. Worried his condition might worsen, I gave him medicine. But when his fever showed no signs of breaking, I stayed by his side all night, afraid to leave. My thoughts drifted to that hospital room years ago. I never imagined Nina Veal, who had always seen me as a rival, would tell Rick what I had said. It was inconceivable. Rick interrupted my reverie, saying, Zelda White, were all of these just my misconceptions? I was somewhat incredulous. So because of these little things, you thought I liked you? So because of these things, you suddenly like me now? Enough. He cut me off. Wearing his pajamas, he lacked his usual domineering air and looked rather forlorn. He didn't answer my questions, but said, Don't say anymore. I understand. I couldn't help but say, Rick, you're really perplexing like this. He lowered his gaze and walked towards my bedroom. I hurried after him, Hey. What are you doing now? Without turning back, he only replied with 2 words, finding letters. In the bottom drawer of my bedside table, he pulled out a pink paper bag. Looking at the letter, he said to me, Zelda, this is a letter I left for you 2 years ago. I smiled slightly but didn't take it. Is it a love letter? There's no need. I'm not in the mood to read such things. Please leave immediately. I don't want to be seen with you again. You've already caused me a lot of trouble. His hand holding the paper bag trembled slightly. We need to clear some things up. I don't want you to see me as an enemy. I took the bag from him. Just as I was about to open it in front of him, he hurriedly turned and left, stumbling over the bed on his way out. What's this? Is it really a love letter? I sat on the bed and casually opened it. A flood of words fell before my eyes. Dear Zelda, when I was little, your Aunt Rita often complained in my ear that she wished I were a girl. She would buy me all sorts of pink and frilly things that only girls would like. Although I didn't like them at all, I always accepted them to avoid hearing her disappointed sighs. Then you came along, and you seemed to instantly capture all her affection. Even though you were dirty when you arrived that day, she, a neat freak, wasn't disgusted by you at all. She even brushed your hair herself. She even prepared a princess-like bedroom for you. Those pink and frilly gifts, I never received them again. They all became yours. Later, she even started coming home more often because of you. At that time, I thought, why? I was her biological child. I even suspected that you might be her illegitimate daughter. Sounds a bit ridiculous, doesn't it? As time went on, you became more and more beautiful. The freckles on your face disappeared, and an entire room she prepared for you was filled with trophies from various competitions. There were even reporters queuing up outside our house waiting to interview you. Not only did you win over my mom, but even my dad looked at you with admiration in his eyes. That kind of expression, I had never received before. No matter how well I did, all I got from them was strictness and dissatisfaction. So I grew to dislike you more and more, and I did and allowed many things that hurt you. Zelda, I'm sorry. I didn't know what you had been through on the day you came to our house, nor did I know how painful your background was. I always thought you were just someone Mrs. Wise found to fulfill her dream of having a daughter. Later, outside the hospital room, I overheard your conversation with Nina Veal. At that moment, I realized my heart was racing. It turned out I had fallen for you long ago. From the moment you rescued me from the fire, I knew I had done many things wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to admit it. Dad had always wanted me to study abroad. When I told him I liked you, he said you were very outstanding now, and I couldn't be too inferior, otherwise I wouldn't be worthy of you. I deeply agreed with him. We reached an agreement that as long as I completed my studies abroad and returned, he would approve of us being together. I've written all my contact information below. The first number is exclusively for you. Zelda, I hope you'll contact me soon after reading this letter. From Rick, who has long fallen for you. I read the letter with mixed emotions. After calming down for a moment, I took out my phone and sent Rick Ford our first WhatsApp message. I've read the letter, and I need to clarify something. What I said in the hospital room that time was all for Nina Veal's benefit. It was all fake. I didn't expect you to overhear it and cause you trouble. If I had seen this letter 2 years ago, my answer would be the same as it is today. When I said I would never blame you, it's because I would never take you to heart. I actually disliked you, but after reading this letter, as long as you don't do anything inappropriate again, I'll put aside our past grievances and treat you as family from now on. The next day, using work as an excuse, I said goodbye to everyone and left the Ford residence early. After a few days of peace, on Friday after work, I saw Garrett Longbottom again at the bottom of the Research Institute building. He had the same hairstyle as last time, but was wearing a pure black suit, adding a touch of maturity to his handsome appearance. I didn't hold back my compliment. You're quite the dapper junior in a suit today. He smiled at me, and you're the beautiful senior who looks great no matter what she wears. After chatting for a while, he asked, has Rick Ford been bothering you recently? Just hearing Rick's name made me feel a bit upset. I replied rather weakly. I suppose so. I might really need your help dealing with the family elders in the future. In a moment of panic, I told them I have a boyfriend now. Garrett seemed a bit pleased. Don't worry, I won't let you lose face when meeting the parents. I couldn't help teasing him, why don't we actually date then? I probably won't find anyone else who can make me as happy as you do. He rubbed his ear, I'm totally up for it. Being with you would be a dream come true. But a relationship shouldn't just be about happiness. The most important thing is that it makes your heart race. I pondered his words for a moment, thinking he might just be sweet talking and joking again. This time we didn't eat out. I drove him to my place, because as my boyfriend, he should know where I live. In the living room, he suddenly said to me, I have a suggestion. What suggestion? He said, sweetie, don't call me Junior anymore. I was taken aback. This was the second time he called me sweetie. Confused, I said, why? I've never called anyone else Junior, it's your exclusive nickname. He put down his chopsticks and looked at me intently. I'm afraid you might get used to it and slip up in front of the elders. For this period, whether in public or private, you call me Gar, and I'll call you sweetie, just to be safe, okay? It seemed to make sense. Getting used to a name is indeed hard to change. I nodded, Gar is fine too. Let's call each other that from now on. I beckoned to him, Gar, come here, let's take a more intimate photo. I want to make it official to my family. He didn't cooperate, sweetie, how can we be so casual with the official announcement photo? Let's go on a date tomorrow, those photos will be more convincing. Thinking that tomorrow was Saturday and I had nothing planned, I nodded and put down my phone. All right, we'll take photos tomorrow. I was about to ask him where he wanted to go tomorrow, but he suddenly stood up, took a step forward to sit beside me. Leaned in close, made a heart shape with one hand, and quickly snapped a photo with his phone. I was stunned, but he calmly said, but today's setting is also good for a stockpile photo to show off our relationship in the future. Show off our relationship? Stockpile? I asked in surprise, isn't it enough to just make the announcement? We don't need to keep showing off, do we? Sweetie, since when did you become so careless? I'll be responsible for taking photos and editing captions, you just need to post them. It won't be much trouble. Well, if my junior helper is being so proactive, how can I, the person involved, complain about it being troublesome? The next day, I woke up early to apply a face mask and put on some lovely makeup. I dressed in the matching outfits we had agreed on yesterday, and when it was about time, I grabbed my bag and went downstairs. Zelda, let's take my car today, Garrett said. I held my breath. Not because I was swooning over him, but mainly because the car behind him looked incredibly expensive. I came to my senses and exclaimed, "Where did you rent this luxury car? There's no need to spend that kind of money. We're pretending to be a couple, not pretending to be rich." Zelda, he looked at me with amusement, "This is my own car." I was shocked. How have I known you for so long without realizing you're a low-key millionaire? Seeing my confused expression, he chuckled, "Zelda, I'm actually quite well off. I just know how to live frugally and never waste money. I like to spend it wisely. Rick likes to collect many cars, but I'm different. I only need this one, the only and best one." I marveled, "You even know Rick's hobbies so well." He looked at me with a hint of affection in his smile, "Zelda, I never go into battle unprepared." Why did I feel a bit flattered? Was I being inappropriate? We went to the amusement park, following Garrett's plan. At first, I thought it was a bit childish. But seeing how happy Garrett looked, and noticing quite a few couples around us enjoying themselves, I gradually stopped feeling it was so immature. By the end of the day, we had taken many photos and had a wonderful time. I connected Garrett's camera to my phone to transfer the pictures and was amazed. "Garrett, how did we end up taking over 100 photos? Which one should we post for our announcement?" "I'll choose. Don't worry about it. I'll send it to you later with the caption." I gave him a thumbs up. When we got to my building, we got out of the car. Suddenly, he took both my hands in his. I looked at him in surprise, and he said, "Zelda, don't turn around. He's not far behind you." "Who?" "Rick." Garrett pulled me a bit closer to him and looked at me with an intense gaze. "Zelda, I think in this situation, real couples would probably kiss, right?" My face flushed hot. I whispered, "But we're not a real couple." "Zelda, then, shall we become a real couple? Although I've been waiting for the perfect moment to confess, what can I do? Today's date had too many sweet moments, and I can't hold back anymore. Zelda, I've liked you for so long." His voice took on a persuasive tone. "Zelda, I really want to kiss you right now. May I have that privilege?" I was stunned. His words exploded in my mind. Before I knew it, he was leaning in to kiss me. I instinctively closed my eyes nervously. He chuckled softly before pressing his lips to mine. My heart was racing, and the heat in my face kept rising. Was I really turning this pretend relationship with Garrett into something real? My mind was in chaos, but the only thing I could clearly feel was the sensation on my lips. As the long kiss ended, he seemed ready for another round. Just then, someone angrily rushed towards us. It was Rick. He really was behind us. I tried to calm my still racing heart and pulled Garrett behind me. I said, "What are you doing here?" Rick Ford glared at Garrett Longbottom, ignoring me. "Who do you think you are? Let her go." Garrett remained calm. "So you're Rick Ford. How uncouth. Our sweet Zelda is too kind to make a scene, but I'm not. If you dare follow us again like you did today, I'll have you arrested." Believe it or not, I was shocked. What? Had Rick been following us all day? Rick exploded with rage. "You bastard, you're asking for it." Rick threw the first punch, and suddenly the two were brawling. I tried to intervene, shouting at them to stop, but they were too caught up in the fight to listen. I could only try to protect Garrett when suddenly Nina Veal appeared out of nowhere. She flung herself at Rick, sobbing, and screamed at me, "Zelda White, have you no heart? Didn't you say you'd marry no one but him? How could you trample on his true feelings for you after winning his heart?" I glanced at Garrett, whose face visibly darkened. I wanted to punch this blabbering woman. I denied everything. "Shut up. I have a boyfriend now. Stop trying to cause trouble." I never said any of that. Take Rick and leave. Right now. Rick sat on the ground and suddenly began hysterically accusing me. Zelda. How could you do this to me? How long have you even known this guy? We've known each other for so many years. I looked down at him, just as he had looked down at me countless times before. I said, Rick, Nina really likes you. Did you know that? Rick coldly replied, what does her liking me have to do with me? I already told her, I don't like her. I only like you. Nina visibly stiffened, her face turning pale. She gave Rick a hurt look, then glanced at me pitifully before running away. I looked at Rick and said in an even colder tone, well, as far as I'm concerned, you liking me has nothing to do with me either. Rick left, battered and defeated. I took Garrett upstairs. I took out the first aid kit in the living room to treat his wounds. His gaze was smoldering. I could barely handle it. He broke the silence. Zelda, you still haven't given me an answer. Good heavens, what answer did he need? I'd let him kiss me and brought him upstairs. Wasn't that clearly a yes? I stammered, are we just together now? Isn't it a bit sudden? It may seem sudden to you, Zelda, but I've been waiting for years. Don't worry about being with me. I won't let you down. I looked into his sparkling eyes, my heart racing, but tried to act calm. All right then, I quite like you too, Junior. He suddenly stepped forward and embraced me, pressing me into the sofa behind and kissing me passionately. The bottles from the first aid kit all tumbled onto the carpet from his movement. Oh my, these younger men are too intense. My face turned bright red. After kissing fervently for a while, he finally said, I should go now. I'll come see you tomorrow. Garrett left, but my mind was still stuck on the kissing scene. I couldn't shake it off. Ping! My phone received a message. Zelda's Garrett. Zelda, I've had ulterior motives towards you for a long time. Now I can finally be open about it. So it wasn't just my imagination. He really did have impure intentions. I hugged my pillow and rolled around happily on the bed several times before finally drifting off to a sweet sleep. The next day, I prepared to take Garrett to the Ford family. He was still driving that shiny new luxury car, the boot full of expensive gifts. I was shocked again. Garrett, I forgot to tell you, I had prepared gifts. Why didn't you say anything? He smiled at me. It's our first visit. How could I let you prepare the gifts? I gave him a polite smile. Is the young tycoon going bankrupt? Garrett casually replied, as far as I know, Innovation Limited is doing quite well. It shouldn't go bankrupt anytime soon. Innovation Limited had collaborated with our research institute many times. It's a well-known research company in the UK. I was dumbfounded, taking a while to react. You're not joking, are you? He then spent a long time proving to me that he wasn't joking. The person in charge of the renowned Innovation Limited turned out to be the mother of my junior who was so keen on discount vouchers. I felt my intelligence had hit an all-time low. He explained somewhat helplessly, that's because I wanted to see you. Discount vouchers were a good excuse. We arrived at the Ford family home in a daze. After introducing Garrett to Mr. and Mrs. Ford, we inevitably reached the question and answer session. Mr. Ford, holding a teacup, asked, Garrett, I remember your family isn't from around here. Have you thought about where you'll settle down if you're dating our Zelda? Long-distance relationships usually don't last. Garrett replied respectfully, Mr. Ford, wherever Zelda is in the future, that's where I'll be. There won't be any long-distance situation. What does your family do? My father is a police officer, and my mother is the CEO of Innovation Limited. The living room fell silent for a moment. After some more casual chat, we stood up to leave. Mrs. Ford had been happy for me the whole time, as if her own daughter had found a good match. Only Mr. Ford seemed deep in thought. As we were leaving, Mr. Ford sighed to me privately, you and Rick, it's really a pity. On Garrett's graduation day, I went to give him flowers as promised. A group of his fellow graduates in their gowns got quite excited when they saw me, which made me feel rather embarrassed. After the ceremony, Garrett took me to visit his mentor. I knew his professor, though we hadn't interacted much before. The old gentleman's hair was already streaked with gray, and he beamed at us, his face wreathed in smiles. Garrett, my boy, with your beloved by your side, your life is now complete. Complete indeed, Garrett agreed happily. As we left the professor's office, I couldn't help but ask, when did you actually start liking me? It seems like everyone knows about it. He held my hand as we walked side by side down the tree-lined avenue of the university. A gentle breeze caressed our faces, making the moment quite pleasant. He said, actually, we met a long time ago, but you don't remember me. My curiosity was piqued. Really? That shouldn't be the case. I've always had a good memory. He smiled without saying anything. I pestered him repeatedly until he finally told me, Zelda, I don't want you to recall any painful memories from the past. I stopped my playful badgering and looked at him, guessing with some disbelief, could it be, before I was adopted by the Fords? He held my hand, locking his gaze with mine, and after a long pause said, our fathers were colleagues, so I've always known about your situation. Remember those group meetings we used to have? Back then, I didn't understand what it meant to like someone, but I always looked forward to seeing you. I would wear what I thought were my best clothes to meet you. Suddenly, I remembered that when I was 14, I spent a long time at the police station. Before Rita took me home, there was a little boy who often came to the station to see me. It turns out that the little boy at the police station, who tried every way to cheer me up, was Garrett. He looked at me with some concern. Zelda, have I made you recall something upsetting? I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said anything. He squeezed my hand. Don't be afraid. All that is in the past now. Zelda, you're amazing and strong. I'll always be by your side from now on. I closed my eyes, and tears flowed uncontrollably. I didn't know why I was crying, I just felt like crying. Perhaps it was because I wanted him to comfort me. From when I was 14 until now at 26, every time we met, he always knew how to cheer me up. A few days later, I met Garrett's parents. The whole family was extremely warm towards me. I also learned that the Longbottoms had wanted to adopt me back then, but because they already had 2 children. Some procedures were more difficult to manage, and later I was taken in by Rita. I didn't feel any regret about it. I felt that getting to know them now was just the right timing for everything.